And right now, we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Romaine Bostick alongside Alix Steel, taking you through the closing bell. A global simulcast. It starts right now. Scarlet Fu joining us in the TV studio. Tim Stenovec in the radio booth. Carol Masser off today. Emily Graffeo filling in today for Carol on what is just a monumental day and a monumental week, Tim, when we talk about this rotation and, more importantly, the idea that investors really do have some newfound confidence that they're finally going to get those rate cuts.
Yeah, I mean, I think the data certainly helped this morning. No rate cut next week necessarily at the July Fed meeting. But still, like you said, that rotation continuing. We're seeing the Dow outperforming the Russell 2000, but the Russell outperforming the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ, not just on the week significantly, but on the day today too, Emily.
That's right. That rotation trade is fully underway, but we are still seeing strength in the mega caps in the S&P 500. But year to date, that NASDAQ 100 now lower than the S&P 500's year to date gains.
So it feels like next week will be a really big test, right? Because you've got a big chunk of the rest of the Mag 7 reporting. For those who think that the NASDAQ's underperformance is an early warning sign of things to come, hopefully they're relying on these earnings reports to help answer that question, whether it is or whether this is just a buying opportunity.
I don't know. I keep hearing on the street, I was just telling Romaine this, that value at risk model for a lot of these systemic funds like CTAs, for example, are still getting hit. So it is surprising that we're not seeing more selling today after yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely here. But a pretty broad-based rally that we have on our hands here today with all the major indices holding in the green, with the majority of the stocks in each one of those indices posting significant gains on the day. A Dow Jones Industrial Average higher by roughly around 660 points, or about 1.7% on the day. The S&P 500 is going to close higher by about 60 points, or 1.1%, while the NASDAQ Composite up 1% on the day. Similar moves for the NASDAQ 100. But your outperformer, modest outperformance, remains the small and mid caps. S&P 400 mid caps up 1.6%. The Russell 2000, Tim and Emily, up 1.7.
Yeah, majority. I think it's fair to say the vast majority of stocks, at least in the S&P 500, moving to the upside today. You got more than 4 stocks higher for every 1 stock that's lower. 438 in the green, 62 in the red in the S&P 500, Scarlet.
And the IMAP is going to show you a green pizza pie. There's no tomato sauce here because all 11 groups, are in the green. Okay. I mean, this is a salad pizza, really. That's what it is.
I see a little bit of red.
Higher. Okay, you want to know what that is?
What is it?
Autos and components down 1/4%, and telecom services down 1/5 of 1%.
I feel bad for whoever has to do decliners today. No, there are some big ones. Okay.
That was a drum roll to him.
It was.
It wasn't me. I don't have to do decliners.
Okay. You're doing gainers. Go for it. You got a lot to choose from.
I really do feel bad. Okay. You want me to do the gainers?
Do the gainers.
Okay, I'll do the gainers. I do want to start with shares of 3M, ticker MMM. Look at that, up 23%, having their best day ever. Second quarter net sales beat estimates. The company lifted the lower end of its full-year earnings forecast. The results are the first under Bill Brown, the CEO, who succeeded Mike Roman. That was just back on May 1st. Brown inherited a much smaller 3M following the spinoff of the huge healthcare products division unit. That was amid massive legal liabilities. 23%, the biggest advance going all the way back to 1980. Bristol Myers Squibb, another one that was higher by double digits today. The company up 11.44% after it raised its 2024 profit forecast. Demand for new medicine suggested the company has gotten past that dip in performance. Adjusted earnings for the full year are going to be between 60 to 90 cents a share, an increase of 20 cents at the midpoint of its prior projection. And finally, Newell Brands. It's the parent company of Coleman, Yankee Candle, Sharpie, Rubbermaid, Crock-Pot, Baby Jogger, and many, many more, climbed the most ever to its highest intraday since September of last year, up more than 40% today. This after the company posted a second quarter profit beat, also raised its yearly outlook. The second quarter gross margin increased to 34.4% compared with 28.5% in the prior year period, Emily.
Well, you gave me the hard assignment, Tim. When I come in, I fill in for Carol.
I'm sorry.
And I have to get the difficult job of finding the red on the salad pizza of the green IMAP. But I did find some decliners. Let's start with T. Rowe Price. Assets under management of $1.57 trillion, just matching estimates. We saw that stock lower about 3% on the day. Second quarter net revenue for the company and EPS also missed, down over 5% on an intraday basis, the biggest drop since February February. But the big decliner today, the one that we've been talking about for the last several hours, is Dexcom, down 40%, the worst drop ever for the maker of blood sugar monitoring devices for diabetics, after the company unexpectedly slashed its 2024 sales guidance, citing a drop in customers and lower revenue per patient. This massive stock decline triggered several price target cuts, Cowen saying it was a rare, disappointing quarter for the company. And finishing up, we have another health-focused company, Biogen, that stock down as much as 7.7% on the day, biggest drop since February, after a committee of the European Medicines Agency recommended against the approval of Biogen's Alzheimer's drug. I will note that the company's drug is already approved in other countries, including the US, China, and Japan, but for Europe right now, it was a no. BMO said that the opinion adds a significant headwind to the drug's chance of approval in the EU and is likely to pressure shares.
Yeah, talk about not being on the same page with that one. All right, guys, let's get to the bond market here, because we saw some nice rallying all across the board. Yields lower, whether you're looking at the twos or the belly or the back end of the curve. And I should point out that for the week, that 210 spread at one point moved about 16 basis points steeper. Now we're only about 8. But nonetheless, that's quite interesting. Like, that's a chunky move in 1 week for that yield curve. And it kind of brings into focus next week and what's actually priced in when it comes to the Fed. Can that front end continue to rally, guys?
Yeah, that's certainly the question. Hey, another question that I have ahead of everything that's going on when it comes to AI. We hear from another, few of the Mag 7 next week. We'll get an update on how these companies are investing in AI. Is what happens to the companies that are not necessarily focused on AI, but starting to adopt the tools using the AI, which brings us to one of the stories on the Bloomberg terminal this afternoon about how JP Morgan is giving their analyst staff their own version of ChatGPT. It's called LLM Suite. And what it does is it helps with research, it helps with writing, though they're quick to note that it doesn't contain specific asset and wealth management division knowledge. This is all according to an internal memo viewed by Bloomberg.
We have some breaking news crossing the wire. This on Bill Ackman and his ambitions to take at least part of Pershing Square public. We're now learning, based on the NYSE's website, that Pershing Square has now postponed the IPO of that closed-end fund that Bill Ackman had been trying to raise money for. We had learned, based on Bloomberg reporting, that he'd been trying to raise roughly about $25 billion on that. He had raised about $4 billion and had planned to push ahead with that IPO. But at least based on what we see on the NYSE website, that our Bloomberg reporters have been tracking, that IPO, at least for right now, has been postponed.
Yeah, the idea is that they were going to file with regulators to raise about $2.5 to $4 billion. So getting that scratch is very interesting. We'll keep tracking those headlines as they come out.
And part of the interesting aspect of this story is that Bill Ackman was counting on his social media presence to really drum up interest in this IPO and perhaps pricing for this IPO as well. I don't know what this says about his social media presence, though, this delay.
And I wonder how long it'll be postponed. Like, here's what we know is they were expected to price the IPO on Monday, trade on Tuesday. We didn't hear back. Representative Pershing Square declined to comment, and representatives from the New York Stock Exchange did not immediately respond to requests for comment.
Yeah, I mean, we have to get some more details on it. But if you look at the Bloomberg reporting that we had a couple days ago, it really seemed to be that at least the initial shopping of this just did not get the type of demand that I guess maybe they had set out to do. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe a postponement really is a postponement, but we'll see.
Yeah, that'll be quite interesting to see. And also, maybe it was just a bad market conditions from what we are looking at as well. Okay, before we go, you guys, did anyone watch the opening ceremonies?
We were working.
Are you kidding me? I've been watching nothing else. I haven't even been watching this program.
Was anyone else really terrified by the weird opening ceremony? What?
Terrified when they cut off Marie Antoinette's head.
And she's singing.
And she held it and sang. And then whatever the band was, it was like shredding heavy metal on the. Come on, this is classic.
I found it very upsetting, and I didn't understand it at all.
I agree. I have no idea what any of this has to do with the Olympics, but it was entertaining.
Well, it's a brief history of what happened in France, basically.
Nothing, because heavy metal came from Britain, and you had Les Mis. That was not written by a French person.
Marie Antoinette. That's French.
Did you see the big teaser though?
How did you guys watch all this today?
Alix multitask.
This started at 1:30.
Tim.
Our show started at 2. I know you were tuned into our show from 2 to 3 while you were prepping for your show. How did you watch this?
Multitask.
We have lots of monitors open.
Night.
Well, time change, Huh?
Emily, what'd you say? It goes at night? It's night in Paris.
I feel like they're. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's true.
Time change.
We're just stuck here in this radio booth.
They lie. They have like 19 different screens there.
We do, but none of them are tuned to the Olympics. I guess that's for a reason.
We saw no torches today.
Maybe we can spend a little time this weekend watching the Olympics. Hopefully not too delayed. And, those spoilers, you got to stay off of Twitter so
if
you
you
don't see
paid
those
for
spoilers.
Peacock, yes, you can.
All right. Well, perfect. I'll be doing that. You guys have a great weekend. That is going to do it for our cross-platform coverage of the market close on Bloomberg TV, Radio, YouTube, and Bloomberg Originals. Alix Steel, you're heading out soon, but we were going to all be back same time, same place on Monday. Have a great weekend, everyone.